We're here today to learn a bit about emotional well-being, and I'm just going to introduce our guest speaker, Conor and McCaffery, and hand it over to him. So, Conor is a registered accredited BACP psychotherapist, and he's been working with self-harm and suicide as issues for the past 23 years. And as Geraldine mentioned, Conor's the CEO of Zest Healing the Hurt. Conor brings an absolute wealth of experience and information to us today. He was appointed the chair of the Northern Ireland Suicide Strategy Implementation Body at the HSSPS back in the day by the then Minister of Health, Jim Wells, for a 3-year period, 2015 to 18, and was then reappointed to that position by Dr. Michael McBride, the Chief Medical Officer, for a further 3 years. Conor's a qualified trainer, hence that Conor's here, because we're eager to be trained and educated, and delivers bespoke workshops throughout the province for the Public Health Agency and the Health and Social Care Trusts, as well as for many community and voluntary agencies and public sector organisations. And just to say, Conor's also fully Access NI trained and cleared. So, Conor, we're so grateful to have you here. As you can see, we're all very eager to learn. So take it away, please.
Okay, thank you very much, Adam, and thank you, Geraldine, for inviting me. It is a privilege to be asked. There's two things I always say before I start. First of all, I'm not trying to be right. You know, we've been working with self-harm and suicide, and although that's very extreme and it sounds very serious, the underlying problem is always 100% emotional health, always. And if you go to any counselling service and whatever issue they're dealing with, the underlying problem is always emotional health. So this is our experience that we've learned from the service users, from the clients. The second thing I always say is this isn't about service users or clients. This is about us. It's about you and me. We live in a culture that isn't really very emotionally healthy. When we think of it, what are we famous for throughout the world? Fighting and drinking. And that's not the sign of a very healthy culture. But there's a reason for it, and it's nobody's fault. It's a transgenerational thing that has come down, and it's really important. It's only in recent years that we're starting to understand what is wrong here. Why do we have such a drink problem? And that's why the subtitle to the talk is the impact of alcohol. There's a thing called the self-harm register. And what happens is when somebody has an episode of self-harm or an attempted suicide, they present it to the emergency department and they note down, the staff note down all the details. It was piloted here in the Western Trust in 2007. 7 out of every 10 people that presented were drunk. In the Republic of Ireland 2 years ago, 7 out of every 10 people who died by suicide were drunk. You can take your life when you're drunk, even though you're perfectly happy sober. And I'll explain that as in the second part of the talk. But the first part's the important part, is that thing of emotional health. What is it? How does it work? Why does it create such problems? So I'll just share my screen here. That one. Oops. That's the one. So we're looking at mental health and emotional health. When we talk about physical health, what is it? How do we stay physically healthy? What makes us physically ill? Well, we know to stay physically healthy, nutrition, rest, and exercise. That keeps our body, the 3 basics of keeping our bodies healthy. What makes us physically ill? Well, if we don't do those 3 things properly, but we're also open then to different illnesses. And for example, we're currently in a pandemic, you know, and that can make us seriously ill. Mental health's much the same. The brain is a physical organ. It needs the same three things. It needs good nutrition, good rest, and good exercise. But what we're talking about is the mind, the psychological content, where our consciousness, thoughts, memories, the unconscious. And how can that take hold? There's two ways. Physically, we can develop tumors in the brain, blood clots. There's a whole lot different illnesses that can attack the brain. But psychologically, we can become ill. There are conditions such as depression, schizophrenia, psychosis, things that can damage the brain psychologically that we have to deal with. The reality is we're born with a system. We're born with a system that keeps us healthy. You know, in the same way, when you're hungry, you will automatically eat, but you must eat. It's the law of the body. When you're thirsty, you'll automatically drink, but you must drink. It's the law of the body. There's another law of the body that we are born with to keep our minds healthy. It's the thoughts, the feelings, and the behavior. It's the law of the body. You were probably thinking, oh, I have to sit through this talk tonight, this Egypt, God knows what he's going to be saying. And then that created a thought. And it creates your feelings, it creates your behavior. Or you might have thought, whoa, great, a very interesting webinar coming up. It creates your feelings, it creates your behavior. It's the law of the body. That's how it works. And that's emotional health. Emotional health are our thoughts and feelings coming together and creating our behavior. That's how it works. That's the way it's supposed to work. Emotions are the physical reactions to what's going on in our head. Each one of you know to look at somebody, are you okay? We can see fear, we can see pain, we can see happiness, we can see embarrassment, we can see feelings, because that's what's going on in here. And you'll say to somebody, how are you? Are you okay? And of course, what's the answer here? I'm grand. The grand word. The grand is not a feeling. But that's okay. It's need to know basis. There's a need to know basis on it. But they're natural, automatic thoughts. They're actually autonomic thoughts. They're the law of the body when we have it. It means to move out. Emotion. That's the system is there to keep us healthy by getting rid of the feelings that come with the thoughts. But we've labeled them. We've labeled them good ones, bad ones, acceptable ones, unacceptable ones. There's no such thing. There's just feelings, just emotions. They're all perfectly natural, but they're essential for our well-being, essential. And each wee person is born totally emotional. They're born with the system. When they're happy, they're happy. When they're frightened, they're frightened. When they're embarrassed, they're embarrassed. When they're angry, they're angry. When they're sad, they're sad. They might cry, the response to sadness, until somebody says, I'll give you something to cry about. Stop going on like a baby. And the wee person thinks, better not do that one. And they break the law of the body. They decide what feeling they will do and what feeling they won't do. But that's not how it's supposed to work. Men are 3 times more likely to die by suicide for that one reason alone. You can't go on like a baby. You can't show people a weakness. It's wrong. Laughing is the response to very funny. Crying is the response to very sad. That's the law of the body. Imagine watching your favorite comedian on TV and saying, oh, it took me all my time not to laugh. But it's no bother when it's sad. In fact, it's even better because what we can actually do, and if any of you have any wee brothers or young sons or grandsons, if something sad comes in the TV, 9 times out of 10, they'll start laughing and making fun of it. Not only is it not sad, it's really quite funny. They can smell tears a mile away and they flip the feeling from one of sadness to the complete opposite to show everybody I think this is very funny. I'm not a baby. I'm not weak. I won't cry. Do you know, unfortunately, when somebody dies by suicide, it's 9 times out of 10 we hear that they're happy as Larry, they've loads of friends, they're having a ball. Now, if that's the behavior, what do you think the feeling is? Do you think they're very happy if they go on to die by suicide? It's the perfect example of flipping so that people won't see how they really feel and what's really worrying them or troubling them. But when they come home and go up into their room, the real person comes out, the wee sad person, the wee hurt person, the wee angry person will come out. But because we don't let it out, because it doesn't move out, it doesn't go anywhere. That's the whole point. That's the problem. That's actually the goal of emotional health. What I say and do is what I think and feel. It's called congruence, being real, being genuine. But what we find a lot of the time here is what I say and do is what I think you want me to say and do. That's called incongruence, and it leads to serious emotional distress because the real emotions don't get out. We're born with this emotion thing. It's there to help us stay healthy. But if we don't let it, if we decide not to do it, if we decide to do a different one, then that creates a problem. Then they start growing inside. So one sad becomes two sads and three sads and four sads. And then we start looking for things to do. There's a great cartoon I would recommend that everybody watch this. It won an Oscar some years ago, and it explains emotional health perfectly. It's taken from the perspective of a young girl called Riley. She lives in Canada with her parents. She's an only child. She loves ice hockey and she has loads of friends. The parents up and move to California, just take her out of the home and move away. And she gets very sad. Sad appears, and happy joy there won't let sad near any experience. She keeps sadness away from everything. She wants to be happy all the time. You have to be happy all the time. Anybody that's happy all the time, get them to the doctor. There's something not right. It's not normal to be happy all the time. Life's not like that. But she keeps this wee one away from all the experiences. And while she's doing that, who's making the decisions? Fear, anger, and disgust. Frightened Conor doesn't make good decisions. Angry Conor doesn't make good decisions. And at the very end, her angry emotion gets her to run away from home and leave her parents. And of course, there's a whole handling looking for her and finding her and bringing her home again. And the three of them sit down and cry together because they didn't explain, because they realized how difficult it was moving, and they allowed the emotion to come. It's funny, at the very end, the happy emotion actually cries when she realizes what she has done to the sadness. But the whole point of the film is our emotions routine. Your body will tell you which one goes with which experience. It may be an experience, it may be a thought, but automatically the emotion will come with it. We can't pick and choose. We can't pick and choose them. And feeling bad or feeling sad is not an illness. It's not depression. Depression's a totally different thing. It's a very serious clinical illness. But when bad things happen or we lose somebody to death, that's the normal response. Grief's the price we pay for loving somebody. When we lose somebody we love, our love turns to grief. And because of that, it never goes away. Otherwise, the love would have to go away. But we learn to carry it. We have to learn to do it. We can't avoid it. We can't go around it. We have to go through it and learn to carry it. But they're automatic responses, and we have to allow them to move out, or they get bigger and bigger and bigger inside. But this is what we do. We ignore them. We do nothing about them. We pretend we're okay when we're not okay. The medicine of choice here is alcohol. I'll explain why. It takes away the pain. And there's hoping and wishing that it'll all be different tomorrow, or it'll all go away next week, or it'll be different when we get married, or if I won the lottery, it'll be great. That doesn't work. It doesn't work. We have to do the feelings. But if they're all built up inside ourselves, we start doing stuff to feel better. They take our minds off it, to distract: sex, alcohol, gambling, drugs, food, relationships, work. Working 16 hours a day so that our heads don't open, so that we keep distracted, that we keep going and going and going. And all these things work in the short term. We learn that they work in the short term. But if we're using them not to feel, then we keep needing to do it more and more and more to get the same effect. We become used to it. For example, just to take drink as an example, the first drink's like a magic potion. Is whoa, wow. And then it takes 2, and then it takes 3, and then it takes 4. And all of a sudden then we have 2 problems. We have 2 problems then. It can be a sex problem, a drink problem, whatever, whatever. Do you know? Because we're just trying not to feel our feelings. Do you know? And just as we talk about the drink thing, this is where this comes in now. This was an article I came across in Business Insider. It talked about a substance that removes stick and plaster, shines chrome, removes tarnish from jewelry, cleans bathroom surfaces, removes sticky glue residue. It's an insect repellent. Disinfects razors, soothes an earache, numbs a toothache, kills weeds, cleans engine parts, and removes rust from screws. If I give you a glass of it, would you drink it? 37 things you didn't know you could do with vodka. I think Smirnoff weren't a bit happy they put that article out, but it's true. That's how it works. We're talking chemistry here. You know, this is the understanding of this. This is chemistry now we're into, not. But the whole point is it's an anesthetic. The injection you get in the hospital for an operation has the same amount of anesthesia as 13 pints of beer. You don't go to sleep when you're drunk. You go clinically unconscious. But it takes away the pain. It takes away physical pain, and it takes away emotional pain. And that's why it's such a problem here, because we have poor emotional health. We don't want people to know when we're struggling. We're afraid they'll think we're weak. You know, we think we have to solve our own problems. It's very much a man thing, but it's anybody, but more so a man thing. What will people think of me if I let them know that I'm struggling here, or if I cry? You know, every day I see people every day, and everybody will cry at a point when they're telling me their stories, because there's some really sad stories. And every single person, when they finish, will say, "I'm sorry for crying." Every single one, male and female, will apologize for crying. Can anybody tell me, you can keep it to the end and tell me at the end, what do we do wrong when we cry? That we need to apologize, or we need to feel bad? We people don't feel bad until they're told. That's enough of that. And please hear me, this isn't a criticism of big people. It's the way it has been. It's the perception of the child. The big person doesn't mean that, doesn't mean don't ever cry again. But the perception of the child is, whoops, a daisy, better not do that one. That's how it affects the child. That's the sad thing about it. And then we wonder, because people don't know why they apologize. You know, they just don't. They just know it feels bad or it feels wrong. But it's well worth looking at that article. I didn't put in all of the biggest, the 37 different things that it does, but it does. That's what it does. And that's what it is. We have a problem here, you know, when you talk about a drink problem. I worked in the addiction service for many years in the Northern Trust, over 20 years ago. And people, you'd ask them, do you drink much? And the first thing everybody says is, yes, but hear me, that's a terminal illness, totally different ballgame. A drink problem is what is a drink problem? If your drinking causes a problem, then it's a drink problem. This is the bit we have to understand. Does it affect your relationships? Does it affect your work? Does it affect your contentment or your physical health? You know, it's a drink problem if a drink causes it. If somebody's out on a Friday night and they come home and have a whole row with people and a whole handling in the home, that's a drink problem, because it wouldn't happen if they were sober, possibly. That's the bit we have to understand. How many drinks is binge drinking? Believe it or not, more than 5 in any one session is seen as a binge drinker. Now, 5 units is 2 pints. I'll tell you a better one again. The 4 chief medical officers came out in February of 2016, and they said, if you drink more than 2 units in any one session, you open yourself to 5 cancers. Now, it's not very often the 4 chief medical officers get together about anything. They did about the pandemic, big time. And of course, everybody cried, nanny state, nanny state. And all they were doing was giving information. It's up to you. 2 units isn't a pint of beer. It's a medium glass of wine. And they're saying if you take any more than that in the one go, you open yourself to cancer. Now, I'm old enough, as you can see, to remember there was advertisements in the early 60s of doctors in America advertising cigarettes and telling people that smoking cured lung cancer. You'll still see them on YouTube if you Google them. Until we knew better and we found out, and years of law and courts and high courts, they eventually conceded that it does. This will happen at some point. But our bodies can deal with it in moderation. That's the whole point. We can deal with it. But we learn that it changes our mood. Social drinking is a couple of drinks. We get this lovely feeling of euphoria and lightness as the anesthesia just settles a bit. And it's a mild relaxant. We socialize with friends. Social drinking is out with the friends, a couple of drinks and home again. That's social drinking. I lived in Italy for some years, many moons ago, and they would have a glass of wine the way we'd have a glass of water. I was there 5 years and they never saw families out eating with somebody drunk. Never. But they're a very emotional people. When they're angry at each other, they're angry and then they're crying and they're laughing, and it comes out as they need to. There's no sort of, oh, I'll get you. There's no that I'll get you someday in their heads, like, or whoa, do I get you the next? They'll say it out and do it. It's gone, done and dusted. They don't need anesthetic in that sense. But they do have alcoholism, don't get me wrong. It's a different ball game completely. And that's the top picture's how it should be. The bottom picture is what it looks like here sometimes. Then you have misuse and abuse. Now, when difficult situations or difficult feelings, there's occasional heavy drinking. This happens possibly when if a relationship breaks down, a person may drink heavily for a while. But when you drink heavily, then there's less euphoria, as you can see, and more pain and sickness, which is the wee hangover. A hangover is the effect of poison. But that's how it manifests itself. That's alcohol misuse, is seeking the effect. Alcohol abuse is when you drink heavily regularly. It becomes a habit of 5 or 6 drinks, 3 or 4 nights a week or whatever, or a lot of drinking at the weekend. You know, it just becomes a habit. But there's no sort of line in the sand between abusing alcohol and becoming an alcohol dependent. There's no signs other than 3 to 5 day hangovers. That's not what it's meant for. That's abuse of the chemical. This one, alcohol dependency, as I mentioned earlier, is a terminal illness. If a person is alcohol dependent and they don't stop, they will die. It's um, it's terminal because alcohol is a poison. They will die from poisoning, which is a natural death. They can die accidentally. As I mentioned earlier, you can die suicidally or you can die homicidally. 82% of all murders in the UK last year involved intoxication. And those are the statistics. But there's no more normal. There's no more euphoria. An alcohol dependent's normal is drunk. They actually feel normal when they're drunk. When they're not drinking, it's total pain and sickness. And it involves, as I said, there's no line in the sand that you see it coming. But it's that the problems are serious biological, psychological, and social problems, and 3 to 5 day hangovers. Those are the warning signs. The other warning sign is drinking to get drunk all the time. When we go out for a drink, we end up drunk. That's a sign that alcohol dependency could be on its way, and that's what it looks like. But that man, when he was in school, didn't decide, I know what I want to be when I grow up. He didn't start like that. That's a serious condition. That man's dying. Do you know, if it was any other illness, we'd be up kicking in the gates and storming. People lying dying on the street like that. And people think, oh, that's your own fault. Who in their right senses would do that as a choice? This is a serious, serious condition. And please hear me. It started probably with a bottle of beer, and it took away the pain. It took his mind off his experiences. It gave him a numbness that nothing else would give him. And it started like that. And then he kept needing more and more and more. And he crossed the line. It's a bleach, an antiseptic, a disinfectant, an anesthetic, and an analgesic. And that's why it does those 37 things. Pure and simple. It's not just a wee drink. It's using perfumes, paints, mouthwashes, deodorants, and general solvents. There were 2 men died 2 weeks ago in the UK for drinking hand sanitizer, because that's what's in it. It's alcohol. Although it's actually methanol, it's not actually alcohol. It's denatured alcohol, but it's the same basic chemical. And they drank it. I think they had to take out hand washes before the pandemic from a lot of the hospitals in the UK because people were coming in off the street and drinking the hand washes. Its main use is to fuel motor cars. 80% of cars in Brazil run on alcohol. The second main use is to fuel rockets. And the third main use is we drink it. But we can drink it because it's beer's 4 to 8% alcohol, wines 8 to 13, 14%. Spirits are 38 to 45% by volume alcohol. So we can drink it, and in moderation we can deal with it. The problem is if we use it as a medicine, if we use it to deal with our feelings. That's the hard bit, you know. I'm conscious of the time. I think if we take a wee break, a lot of this information is very difficult. I don't underestimate how difficult it is, because when we talk about these things, we automatically apply them to self. We don't start thinking of other people automatically. Normally we think of ourselves. But it's very important when we're talking about mental health and emotional health, and how do I stay healthy? You know, it's the letting out the feelings is the important thing. Otherwise, this becomes a medicine. It becomes a cure, you know, but it never ends well. And that what it does the complete opposite. It starts off as a solution to a problem of how I feel, but then it turns into a second problem. And that's the bit we have to be careful around. So if we just leave it there for 10 minutes and we'll take a wee break and then complete, we're all back after a wee comfort break. The reason alcohol does those 37 things is because this is what's in 1 unit of alcohol. It's, if you notice the top um, of the slide, alcohol is C2H6O. That's the chemical symbol. If you look at the very bottom, diethyl ether, the anesthetic, C2H5O to the power of 2. So it's all almost identical, but twice as strong. And those are all the ingredients in 1 unit. That's how it does those 37 things. But the reasons why we drink is that relaxation, the chilling out, numbers 10 and 11, chloroform and diethyl ether. And as I mentioned earlier, that's the injection we get in the hospital. No, he's not sleeping. He's unconscious and they've blocked his airways, but it's good crack. You know, the sad thing is it changes people's brains. Do you think something like that is funny? She's not sleeping. You know, when was the last time you lay down the footpath for a snooze? We don't do it, you know. The sad thing about that is if anything comes up from her stomach, it'll go straight into her lungs. The most common death in intoxication is choking on the content of your stomach. She's not sleeping. She's drowning in the sea. But her friends thought, that's good crack. Like, Mum will put a photo on the internet. He's not sleeping. But when the anesthetic wears off, he'll wake screaming. He'll be in agony, you know. But the people doing it think it's good crack. That's what it does to our brains. That's the physical effect of the chemical when it happens. And that's, we've looked at how it works, and that's how it works. This is how the liver deals with it. When it goes into the system, the brain immediately says there's a poison in the system, get rid of it. Now we can, because moderation, the liver can deal with it so it doesn't hurt us, it doesn't affect us. And it turns ethanol into acetaldehyde, which is a pure poison, turns that into acetic acid, turns that into carbon dioxide, then turns that into water. That's the liver's job. And it takes 1 hour for 1 unit for a man and 1.5 hours for 1 unit for a woman. That's how it works. That's why they say be careful more than 2 units, because it's a chemical poison. Now, if we drink too quickly or we're not used to it, this happens. That's not a sign of weakness. That's a life-saving event. The brain knows it can't take alcohol out of your blood, so it stops any more getting into your blood when we reach that poisonous level. But here, if you do that, you're a weakling. You can't hold your drink. This is what happens in the brain. Excuse me. It's a psychoactive drug. It changes the brain. It cuts the connection between the short-term and the long-term memory and results in, how did I get home last night? Oh dear, what did I do last night? Imagine if you woke up this morning and you hadn't been out last night, but you couldn't remember it. What would you do? What would you think? What would you feel? My goodness, there's something seriously wrong with me. I can't remember last night. When it's drink related, it's don't be telling me, I don't want to know. Oh dear. It never ends well usually. But we talk about it being a depressant. The depression is called dysthymia. That second one there, that's the mood altering and depression of the central nervous system. If you go to the doctor and say, doctor, I think I'm depressed, he or she's first question to you will be, do you drink much? They need to know, is this depression caused by your drinking, or are you clinically depressed, which is the chemicals in the brain, serotonin, not being produced in the brain, and they need to know that. Because if it's the drink one, if it's dysthymia caused by alcohol, there's no tablet can cure it. In fact, if you get antidepressants, you'll see on it, please do not use alcohol. But that's what happens. And then you put the depression along with suppressing your inhibitions. My goodness. When you don't see risk or fear, we've seen the pictures of that, like of what you can do when there's no risk or fear awareness. Korsakoff's psychosis begins with blackout. How did I get home? It's the inability to form new memories, and it's identical to Alzheimer's disease. They're now hospitalizing 20-year-olds, 20-year-olds in the Western Trust with Korsakoff psychosis, the inability to form new memories because the wee brain of they start drinking at 11 and 12, and their wee brain, your brain doesn't fully grow until you're 28. So at 11 or 12 years of age, it's a wee tiny brain. And if you get drunk, it's damaged. And then it starts to grow damaged. So if you keep drinking, it gets more damaged, grows more damaged. And we're finding out now the young adults are developing Korsakoff psychosis and Wernicke's encephalopathy, which is kind of just a warning that Korsakoff's is coming. But the 1 unit per hour are for adults, not for children. That's for adults when our brains are fully formed and when our liver's fully formed. The liver doesn't fully form till we're 21. So, but the liver's a brilliant organ. It can heal itself with alcohol-free days, which is why they say, please have 2 or 3 alcohol-free days to allow the liver to heal. You can actually see the depression setting in. That's what it's for. That's the social event. Out with your friends, couple of drinks. You know what time you're going out when you be home again. That's what it's for, and it's not a problem. This isn't an anti-drink talk. There's absolutely no problem with that. It's a great social tool, really good social tool, great thing to use to relax. But it's a disaster for dealing with feelings. After a couple of drinks, then a wee quiet person will talk the hind legs off a donkey. You couldn't shut them up. They just start talking. That's when somebody will ring a helpline with their problems. And you make an appointment the next day, they don't turn up because they're back to the wee quiet person again. It gives them the courage, as they say. This is when the depression starts to set in, where the wee talkative person goes quiet. And you think, what's wrong with you? You've got very quiet. That's dysthymia starting. And within that, then, there can be a rage that comes from nowhere. Are you looking at me? A nonsense, like. But that's when you can kill somebody or hurt somebody. Anger, if you think you're worthless and useless, you can turn it on yourself and get real angry at yourself in that stage. That's the full-blown depression. It's called the lachrymose stage of intoxication. And if that person's sitting in the house on their own, that's when they'll lift a bottle of tablets or get out a rope or get a knife. If they're out in company, you have to watch them quite closely, comfort them and soothe them till that stage passes. Otherwise, they can disappear and head to a bridge or head out and head away from everybody. It's just an overwhelming sense of darkness and despair. And the person doesn't understand it. They're just overwhelmed by this sense, this depression. And then you go unconscious. You do not fall asleep when you're drunk. And the 7th stage of intoxication, 500 milligrams per 100 milliliters of blood, certain death. Doesn't matter how big and ugly you are or who you can drink under a table. This will happen. It's a chemical poison. The word intoxicate comes from the Greek meaning to poison yourself. I mean, this is so obvious, we don't see it. We just don't see it. And when that happens, you go to the hospital, they detoxify you, they get the poison out of your system. But they can't, they just stop more going in. The only thing that takes the poison out of your system is sleep. Your liver. They'll put you to sleep and get you settled and let you lie until your liver eliminates the poison. That's the liver's job. It will deal with 90% of everything we drink. The other 10% comes out in our breath, our sweat, our tears, and our urine, which is why we urinate more when we're drinking. That's the body getting rid of the poison. That's quite to help the liver. But we don't see it like that. We just see it as a wee drink. We minimize it. You coming out for a couple? Did anybody ever ask you, you coming out for 20 the night? You wouldn't. Like, it sounds, whoa, you've a problem. We just don't say that. Do you know? 1 unit every hour and a half. And this is what it has become. This is what it's become. That's 3 units going in that wee girl's throat at the one time. That's called the dentist chair. It's really common now in stag doos. That's 5 bottles of spirits going into his system at the one time. And they're not stopping because he's a real man. They'll stop when he jumps up and spits it all out all over the place. Hopefully, it won't stay in his system. It shouldn't. But he's a real man. He's a real man. That's a badge of honor. And that's, as I said, that's what the chief medical officer said in 2016. Possible cancers. And that's not even the mental health side of it. That's the physical side of it. That's not cute. It's most certainly not cute. That wee liver's about that size. That's like a bottle of vodka, that child. One sip. That's what we do. We think it's cute. We think it's funny, and we'd laugh, but when you realize the chemistry of it, that's not one bit funny. And those wee boys, they'll remember that feeling. That's the sad, but once you experience that euphoria, they'll remember that. And if they're doing that at that age, you can be sure they'll be drinking at 10 or 11, whatever. Professor David Nutt was Tony Blair's drug czar, and they sacked him. And they sacked him because they said, "Oh, you said that cannabis wasn't that harmful," which it isn't. This was a study done by 12 experts. There was neuroscientists, social scientists, psychiatrists, psychologists, and they scored each available drug, legal and illegal, as on harm to self and harm to others. And you can see what came top of the list. That's why he got sacked. He told in the drinks industry, you can't do that. You can't do that politically. But he was right insofar as cannabis isn't as harmful as alcohol. That's not encouraging people to take cannabis. That's a scientific fact, and that's what happened. The self-care, this is one when we're talking about, that's the whole alcohol thing, and whether we like it or not, it's a medicine of choice here. Basically because it's an anesthetic. It takes away our pain. It's the first thing we turn to. And, when I say that, I'm talking in general terms. I'm talking about emotional ill health. Some people, it's not alcohol, it's drugs, or it can be sex, or it can be work, or it can be gambling, or it can be relationships. But here, somehow, for some reason, that's the one that's cheap, it's available, it's acceptable in a whole lot of ways. But this is what we need. This is Professor George Everly, Stanford University School of Medicine, is the expert on, emotional health and self-care. And this is a pyramid, that he created as to how do we stay emotionally healthy. And it's based, as you can see, the bottom of the pyramid's based on faith. That's not necessarily religion. It's what you believe life to be. What's my purpose in life? What is my meaning of life? Because that'll determine my attitude, both physically and mentally, to rest, nutrition, exercise. We need other people. We're a social species. People ask me what's the most important thing in the work I do, what skill? And it's not a skill. I suppose the most important skill is listening, but the most important quality is compassion. Because we're born to care. If you watch wee people, they're just born full of kindness and love and caring for each other. If we didn't, there would be no human race. If we weren't born with it, built into us, we would have died out hundreds of thousands of years ago. If we didn't care. If I took sick and nobody cared, that's it. But we're born to care. But the whole point is we have to care about ourselves first. Well, not first, as well. Normally it's other people are more important than me. And, it's not unusual to be great at helping other people, but not very good at it ourselves. And we mentioned it earlier about compassion fatigue and running out. But if we want to live a healthy life, we have to ensure that we have a meaning of life, whatever that may be. As I say, it can be religion, not necessarily. Some people just want to be the best parents they can be and have lovely children and let them go on and have grandchildren and great grandchildren and go on through the ages in that sense. You know, that's what it does. The trusts all of this 5 ways to well-being. I have this anagram because my age and kind of forget things. So it helps me remember the 5 ways to well-being. Connect, learn, be active, notice, and give. And we'll look at those a bit more closely. You know, what does an emotionally healthy person look like? What do we have to do? And please hear me, this isn't about perfect. This isn't about perfect. This is about understanding and working towards a place where we can improve our quality of life. You know, because if we don't, we see the results of it every day. And it's not about a class thing, although deprivation's a big thing in it, but it's not about intelligence. You know, this isn't about how smart you are or how intelligent you are or what job you do. This is about, do I deal with my feelings? Am I trying to be real? Do I talk to somebody? You know, and I'm not talking about counselling, not necessarily. If it gets really bad, then there's counselling. All you need is a bestie, a BFF. My granddaughter says, "Granda, you're my bestie." I don't think I am, like, but that's what's needed. Somebody that you can tell what it feels like to be you at that moment in time, and they won't shut you down or shut you up or I butt you. You know, if we could wise up and pull ourselves together, we wouldn't be having this conversation. I wouldn't be in a job if we could do all this ourselves. But it's amazing how we think we should be able to do it ourselves. But we shouldn't, because we're not, that's not the way we're made. We're a social species. We need each other, you know, and we need each other more when we're struggling. Otherwise, we do stuff. Otherwise, we'll do stuff. That's what we help. You know, when we're seeing our clients, this is what we try. They encourage them to do, to emote, to let their feelings out. It's amazing. I see people in their 50s and 60s. They tell me stuff that happened when they were 9 and 10. And it's the first time in their lives they've ever put the event and the feeling together, and it just goes. And they feel a ton weight off their shoulders just for telling it. Because nobody listened back then. Nobody wanted to know. Nobody heard what was going on. And the wee person separated the two things. They put the picture away, but you can't put a feeling away. And then they had a life of chaos trying to avoid their feelings. Yeah. Talking's great. It's the big picture. It's the thought process that leads to the feelings. Exercising releases dopamine, endorphins in the brain that make us feel good. Really important. It's very difficult in this environment of lockdown, you know. But at the same time, there's a lot of YouTube videos and things we can do. There's one that I do. There's a boy who does 2,000 steps in 7 minutes, and it's music, and you just step along with it. You know, I normally be out and about, but I'm traveling all around the north. But I've been sitting here for the last year, and I put on half a stone, and it's happening, you know. And these are things that make us feel anxious and not feeling good about ourselves. Not everybody talks. Write it down. Write your feelings down. If you're having really difficult feelings, write them down and look at them. Look at what you're thinking. Sometimes when it's flying around in here, we can't make sense of it. It's overwhelming. Up here, they say, my head's fried, up in this part of the world. But when you get it out, one thing at a time, you take it out of your system. Do you know? Some people deal with their emotions by writing it down. I don't know if there's any Leonard Cohen fans or Don McLean fans, but they emoted through their music. Leonard Cohen could hardly put 2 words together, but he was brilliant at expressing how he felt in his music. Not everybody talks. Physical means of expression is for anger. It's really important to understand anger is what they call a secondary emotion. You don't get angry. There are three feelings that you're going to get first: fear, hurt, and frustration. And if we don't deal with them, we become angry. But anger comes with an energy. And if we're not very careful, we'll point it at somebody. But that's not the emotion anger then. That's aggression. That's a totally different ballgame. When we take what we're feeling and put it at somebody else and say, this is your fault, that's not the emotion anger. Anger's there for me to deal with my hurt, my fear, and my frustration. I can get frustrated at myself and you just look what you did. That's my anger to deal with that experience. The minute I say, did you do that to me? That's a total different ballgame. Same applies to fun. I mean, I could be cracking jokes here and we're all laughing, and then I pick somebody out of the crowd and I make fun of them. Everybody may laugh, but that's not one bit funny. That's not fun. That's not what the emotion's for. To humiliate somebody, for somebody to laugh at them. That's not funny. And you see all the big comedians doing that now. They just go around the front row and humiliate as many people as they can. And everybody's in fits. That's not funny. I mean, that's not what jokes and laughs and fun's about. Relaxing is essential. Time to yourself. To be able to sit in your own company, not avoiding people, but just to sit still. I don't know if you're aware, there's a lot of free stuff over the last year from different organizations, like Aware, the depression organization, has put out a lot of mindfulness and relaxation techniques, things that you can do just to stop and settle down. The public health agencies have put out, there isn't a day goes past I don't get an email with a new program they put around the clients. That's really important. All these things help because this anxiety sneaks up on us. We're trying to make something normal that is really not normal, and it's quite stressful. Relaxing that's, as I say, that's the important thing, really important. Physical reassurance, big hug. Big hugs. We need big hugs. When a wee person's in bother, what do? They run with their arms open. You don't hand them a card for a CBT therapist. You say, come here to me. Come here to me. Because that's all we can do when we're struggling at times. But again, this current situation has really hammered that one. And I'm not sure if there'll be into the near future, will there be a physical resistance to doing this just in case because of what has happened? But it's essential. We need it. We need that physical touch. We need that reassurance and hugs. But we have to take responsibility for ourselves. There's no point expecting somebody to come to the door to do it for us. But I'll go back. The number one at the top is the big one. That's the big one. That's the one we need to do. And I'll just, to finish off, fly through what does an emotionally healthy person look like? Now, please hear me. This is perfection. This is not, we all should be like this. We try and do as many of them as we can, but we need to know what it is we need to do. Emotionally healthy people are connected. We don't isolate ourselves. You have to connect to your friends and family. They have a conscience. They do the right thing even when nobody's looking. We're not doing things to show people that we're great when really inside we're not that genuine. Emotionally healthy people care and have compassion. And we're born with it. It's just when we get hurt as wee people, we pull back from it because we're afraid it gets hurt again. You can spend time in solitude and quiet and enjoy it. That's the importance of the time to yourself, that we 10 minutes or 15 minutes a day. They use their brains and cognitions to help themselves make good decisions. They talk positively to themselves and recognize their talents, contribution, and worth. To be able to look in the mirror and say, it's okay to be me. It's not about I'm brilliant or I'm perfect. It's just me, whatever that means. And if there's things we don't like about ourselves, talk to somebody and get it sorted. Because usually you find we believe the lie. We people aren't born thinking I'm useless and worthless. That's a perception they have of messages they get. Sometimes the messages are real, sometimes it's just a misunderstanding, but it creates their sense of self. They're emotionally healthy people create goals and sustain their actions to meet them. They have insight into themselves and can look at their real feelings. And that's what writing down your feelings can do. You start to see how am I feeling and what situations create what feelings. And you become aware of your values and beliefs. And they have values that they live by. Excuse me. Includes respect for others, honesty, keeping their word, kindness, a strong work ethic, a principle of not harming people, a dislike of cheating or swindling, and a sense of fairness. And all these things make sense. But this, it's simple, but it's not easy. It's not easy. We have to have them as goals and work towards them, and challenge ourselves when we fall short. Emotionally healthy people are flexible. They can change directions if things work out or don't work out. They're able to deal with that. They care and attach to another human being. They're not competitive, violent, selfish, or deceitful in relationships. We tell people we love them, and sometimes we don't even know what that means. Words are 7% of a message, the words we use. The way we say it is 38%. The tone, eye contact, physical expression, body language, 38%. 55% is what I understand those three words to mean. But nobody ever asks, what do you mean? It's just, I'm in love. And it's a brilliant feeling. It's probably the best feeling ever. But we never ask, what do you mean? Then 6 months down the road, it's like, whoa, where did you come out of? What's this about? I didn't think that's what you meant. Because we don't ask. And we don't tell people, when I tell you I love you, this is what I mean. This is what I will do for you and what I want. What I'll give you and how we'll be together. They don't use language to manipulate, hurt, or deceive, but truly communicate and foster understanding. Have respect for bodies and express this through good diet and regular exercise. The three things that are essential. So you can see how attitude determines this. Expect to work, embrace it, and make the most of it. They don't expect others to take care of them, but sometimes when we're not well, it's lovely. People will, because that's what we're made to do. Emotionally healthy people seek and know their purpose and they pursue it. Finally, they strive to take action to facilitate tasks required of them, pursue goals. They have a good balance between emotions and thinking, because they'll come hand in glove and we have to deal with them. You can't brush one to the side and think, I'll feel this. No, your body will tell you what the feeling is. Emotionally healthy people are resilient and bounce back from loss or failure, and emotionally healthy people listen. And that takes us finally to the definition of listening. This is the Chinese verb to listen, ting. On the left is a big ear. It's all characters. The top right is 10 out of 10. Underneath that's a pair of eyes, then undivided attention. And at the bottom is a big heart. I give you my ears, my eyes, my undivided attention, and my heart. Now, that's listening. That's why we should be listening to each other. What are you feeling known when somebody's come here to me? You sound sad, you sound hurt. Open the door for them to talk. Rather than your grand, oh, thank goodness for that. He said it was grand. Phew, that's great. But we can see it, and this isn't about counselling or therapy. This is what we should be doing for our family and friends. We should be listening to them. That's what we aim for, the wellness, what they call the wellness wheel, where we have a good balance between physical, intellectual, emotional, spiritual, whatever that means, social and occupational. Because once we go out, if any of those go out of sync, the rest of them all shrink. If I have a big workload and I'm working 16 hours a day, there's no room for those other ones. It'll be tooty circles. Again, it's not about being perfect. It's about, if there are any parts of my life I'm not taking care of? You know, what we find 9 times out of 10, it's always the emotional one. And it leads to a social life of out with the friends. They get the anesthetic,